So I want to get this right because this person's resume is so impressive. Do you know Roberto Salinas Leon? He is the executive director of the Atlas Network Center for Latin America. Currently, listen to all of these: president of the Mexico Business Forum, president of the Alamos Alliance, senior debate fellow and debate lecturer at the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Foundation. I love Silent Cal. I wish more presidents were like Calvin Coolidge, a little hands-off, a little sexy. He's also an adjunct. Thank you. Yes, let's hear it for Calvin Coolidge. We don't give it up to him enough. I think that's very important. Also an adjunct scholar at the Cato Institute. We love the Cato Institute. He's published more than 2,000 editorials. He's on CNBC, BBC. I can have him on my show, just so whenever anyone reads his bio, it's like, oh yes, and a frequent guest on the Fox Business Network. And listen to this. He has a BA in political economy, history, and philosophy. That is the trifecta from Hillsdale College. You know who went to Hillsdale College? Kat Timpf. Kat Timpf went to Hillsdale College. It's here for Kat Timpf. Yes. Our Fox Nation viewers right now are very delighted about that. But I'm most excited because, and Michigan, blah, 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 they're part of the Big Ten. UCLA's going to the Big Ten, so now we have to hate all those schools. Sorry, Ohio State. He has a PhD in philosophy from Purdue University. He is a Boilermaker. I love it. Let's get this summit going. Please welcome Roberto Salinas Leon.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Roberto Salinas. There's a tradition at Freedom Fest that Mark Skousen has very generously invited me to moderate these panels. I'm very grateful for that, but these panels are also extremely challenging because Mark asked us in 25 minutes to basically turn the tide and solve the world's problems. Well, at least we can get a good discussion going, and I think we have an absolutely spectacular panel to do this with our good friend Barbara Combe that has traveled all the way from Austria. And Barbara, it's wonderful to see you again, and also in person, meeting again in Las Vegas. You and I have been through these exchanges before. We also have the great Steve Moore that is going to tell us how to unleash growth and prosperity. Preity Upala is the first time here at Freedom Fest, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on in India and in the Southeast. And of course, Jim Rogers, another person that is very well known to us here at Freedom Fest. So please welcome our panelists. So let's get right to it. 2022 is literally being 2022. Radical uncertainty is once again all over the place. It is absolutely widespread, and this has generated what seems to be tidal waves of autocracy, of greater economic centralization, and of quick fix solutions by many bureaucrats and would-be central planners that think that they have magic wands and think that they have quick fix solutions. In the midst of all of this, the inflation that was supposed to be transitory now has turned out to be rather permanent. And those in the millennial and centennial population groups are waking up to something that had not been seen in 40 years, not just in the United States, but throughout the world. These almost double-digit inflations, in some cases, like in our backyard, Argentina, for instance, in Latin America, Venezuela, they're facing triple-digit inflation. Once again, the 1980s hyperinflation is coming back to us. I'd like to start with Steve Moore, who has a great daily email about unleashing prosperity. And Steve, you were surprised in yesterday's comment that you shared with us about the inflation report that came out at 9.1%. And certainly, I don't think anybody thought at the beginning of the year that the United States would be facing something that we haven't seen in 40 years. What's going on, and what can we do about it?
Well, it's very simple. I mean, we have people in Washington that have no idea what they're doing. And so, you know, I look at it very simply. Like, you know, that period between Reagan and Trump was a real freedom revolution where we had incredible prosperity, the greatest period of wealth creation in the history of civilization. And when you look at these inflation rates now, you're right, it's 9.1% on the consumer index. I don't know how many of you saw this morning the news that the producer price index, which is the cost for businesses to put goods on the shelves, that rose by 11.3%. So those are really, really bad numbers. Those remind me of Jimmy Carter and Nixon, Ford, and Carter, that era. And I would say this, that it didn't happen by accident. The match that lit this forest fire of higher inflation was unquestionably the massive amounts of debt spending we've done over the last 4 years. And Trump deserves some of the blame for this. We did $2 or $3 trillion. And by the way, let me say something. Never, 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 never again should we let government shut down our economy. Never, never again. Never should we allow them to shut down our schools. Never should we allow them to shut down our parks, our churches. This was, in my opinion, the most outrageous power grab by government ever. And by the way, the statistics are crystal clear, almost irrefutable, that lockdowns did not protect the health of the American people or people around the world. Lockdowns do not work. And I am very worried that the next time we have some kind of strain of virus, I guarantee you the left is going to try to shut down the economy again. We can't let that happen. I'll make one other quick point and then turn it over to the others. That this is pretty amazing, that if you go back 9 months ago, Roberto, there was a major piece, I believe it was published in the New York Times, by 15 Nobel Prize winning economists and 30 to 50 of the most prominent economists at American universities around the country. And they all said, and I don't know if you remember this, they said in this note, don't worry, Biden's policies will not cause inflation. That's what, I mean, you can, these are supposed to be the best economists in the country, and it shows why people don't trust economists, because they got it completely wrong. I mean, this is like, having a doctor that amputates the wrong arm. I mean, so they got it completely wrong, and that's because you still have this Keynesian influence in the economics profession that believes that government spending is a positive thing. But when you flush $4 trillion of money, of spending and borrowing into the American economy, it's as sure as the sun is going to rise in the east and set in the west that you're going to have rampaging inflation. And that means we have to stop the government spending monster, period.
I'll get back to that, Steve. Thank you very much for those insights, but especially in recapturing the principles of prosperity. Now, Barbara, that same mentality seems to be pervasive in Brussels and the European Central Bank. And we wake up this morning and, again, another surprise, another 2022 moment is the euro is less than parity. What is going on? Is this also a consequence of this monetary expansion and this idea that just by printing more money, MMT, I want to ask Jim Rogers later about MMT. What is MMT? Modern monetary theory. John Taylor says it's neither modern nor monetary nor a theory. So, Barbara.
Well, and by the way, Karl Menger actually in 1907 was disputing a certain German professor called Knapp, and he was actually arguing the same thing stupidly about monetary theory already back then. And Menger, the Austrian professor, said, no, this is bullshit, it will never work. Sorry, my language, I just had to tell that. But following up on what Steve said, I mean, we have the same issues, we are just even later in Europe. We did not do the right thing with regards to QE, we did it more and more. We had the APP programs, we had the PEP programs, the pandemic emergency purchasing programs for COVID. We did all the lockdowns over, and now we have the war in Ukraine going on. So we have actually 3 external shocks that, surprise, surprise, all of a sudden they are here together, and then this rises the tide, and it creates even more tension and even more disruption. And we have no tools at all because Brussels and Frankfurt are still collaborating. As a matter of fact, there should not even be a telephone line between the two. They should keep monetary policy and fiscal policies apart. And this has not happened in Europe for the past decades, at least ever since the EU got that strong, and we have this centrally planned economy out of Brussels. So this is one reason. Second thing, sovereign debt, we have already touched upon that. Finally, we rise our interest rates for the first time as of this week. 0.25 is the first raise in,
And the world is ending because
almost
they
11
rise,
years.
right? Yeah.
11 years after being negative. I mean, this is a no-go. And then, because what is interest? The price for money. I mean, R star, the natural interest rate is down. People don't even know that. So then we have the COVID lockdowns, which were the disaster for Europe, and which now brings also an energy issue. And I think this is worth discussing separately, but Russia is really being on war with the rest of Europe. And as of now, gas is still running to Europe. Nabucco has been, one of the pipelines has been shut down earlier this week on the 11th. And just for fixing reasons or for service reasons, I think everybody can assume that it will not be reopened again. And our politicians were unable to allow the industry to look for alternatives and the market to find solutions. So it will be a rather cold winter in Europe, unfortunately.
Now is the winter of our discontent?
Exactly. It's not Lady Thatcher. It's, I think, all over Europe and not just Britain. It will be more than discontent. It will be pretty rough. But that also provides us opportunities because people see that the socialist policies simply don't work and that we must not go top down and be told you have to be locked in, you have to follow what those guys say. And it doesn't work. We know it, but the sanctions will also fire back to the European industry. It already does on both sides. In the industry, look at the car industry, for example, in Germany, it's more or less done.
Moribund.
And sad to say. And also on the financial markets, we see it.
Jim, speaking of financial markets and of what we claim to know, China seems to be following the policy of lockdowns, this obsession with zero COVID and everybody stay at home, and once again entering into that zombie economy where you have a collapse not just of demand but also of supply. Is this sustainable? Is this what's going on? And are we once again facing in China and in Asia another wave of the easy solution to go into QE whatever?
Well, as Steve points out, lockdown has rarely been successful, not been a very good way to build an economy or to build a society. I cannot speak for the Chinese. Obviously, I'm American like you. But that is the approach they've taken. It's certainly not going to help their economy or our economy. And I don't know why they're doing it. You can ask them. I live in Singapore. Singapore locked down for a while. It was not good for Singapore. I did not agree with that's the way to do it. But again, these kinds of politicians are not very smart. That's why they get government jobs. They couldn't get a job in the real world. But I want to alert you. We're going to have very serious problems in the world coming up. You may remember 2008, we had a very bad problem because of too much debt. Look out the window. Since 2008, the debt has skyrocketed everywhere in the world. So the next time we have an economic problem in the world, it's going to be worldwide. It's going to be the worst in my lifetime because the debt is so much higher now. The central banks around the world do not have a clue. It's been a long time since we had a good central banker. We had one in America in the 60s, we had one in America in the 70s. India had one 5 or 6 years ago. He's gone, he's at a university now. Just shows you what happens to the smart guys. So it's going to be extremely bad, the worst in my lifetime, and I'm certainly older than many of you. And you should be extremely worried.
Is this the beginning of it, what we're seeing right now? I mean, is this the beginning stage of that crisis?
Well, I wish I were that smart, but my answer is probably. But what I would suspect will happen, something will happen in Ukraine, some kind of peace, I hope, because it's a very foolish war. They all are. But if something happens in Ukraine, oil prices will come down, grain prices will come down, and so the central banks will say, oh, everything is okay now. We don't have to worry about inflation. They will see that the economy is bad, so they'll start printing money again. And they will print as fast as they'll print until we run out of trees. I mean, they're not very smart people. And then some of you may remember that in 1980, U.S. Treasury bills yielded over 20%. That's not a typo. Over 20% because things were so bad. Be very worried. Be very, very worried. It's coming again.
Preity, should we also be worried about India? There's a lot of talk about, remember 20 years ago it was all about the BRICS, right? Brazil, Russia, India, and China, Jim O'Neill. So now it seems to be the BRICS upside down. Is India part of that equation?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. Pleasure to be here. Good morning. Hope you're having a wonderful panel. Very riveting. I've always said this, that this is the Asian century. The next 50 years will be Asia's. And I think what happens there affects all of us, and it's something that we have to take very seriously here in America. As far as the Indian economy goes, very quickly, I just want to talk about three things: the economy, inflation, and the future. As far as growth rate go, it still remains the fastest growing economy in the world, even post-pandemic. So before the pandemic, it was closer to 10, and it's 8.8 this year, forecasted for 6.5. And so during a pandemic, to have those kind of growth rates is still good. Thankfully, it's bounced back. Just to compare with the US, US is expected to grow at 1.7% next year and 0.8% in 2024. We must be so worried. Just in general, and obviously what happens to America ripples across the world. But specifically about India, as far as the inflation goes, I guess the geopolitical events of the last few months have had different effects on different countries. India happens to be the largest importer of cooking and edible oils in the world. Now those prices have fallen dramatically, and that one thing alone has saved the Indian inflation rates and the economy in many ways. The inflation rates are at 6% right now. Pre-pandemic, they were at 3%, which is very healthy. So I don't suspect an inflation, thank God. And I don't suspect a recession yet. I think we will bounce back. And just to end with the future, I think as patriots and as Americans, it's not wise to compare just China and India in terms of economy and growth. I think we have to understand that these are two very different countries that mean different things to the world and to the global order. One is an ally and a strategic partner. The other is the greatest adversary and the greatest threat that we face on the planet today. And it's sad that we have taken our eye off the ball because of other conflicts that are happening right now. So just as Americans, always keep that in mind and, work with your allies. And I've always said, American foreign policy, they don't know who their friends are, they don't know who their enemies are. They sleep with their enemies and they screw their friends. So that must change. So
Thank you.
I feel the future is bright. I have hope. And
even though we're sleeping with the enemy.
Well, we must stop sleeping with the enemy. And just to end, guys, if you're interested about China, what's happening in Hong Kong, Taiwan, all of this is going to unfold in front of our eyes in the next few months. Anthem Film Festival, part of the Freedom Fest, is showing a movie at 1:30 p.m. on Jimmy Lai and the state of affairs in Hong Kong. So please check it out. Please catch that movie. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Preity, thank you. We have 8 minutes to turn the tide. So that distribution, equal distribution of minutes implies 8 minutes, but I have to talk about Latin America too, so I might abuse my privilege. Barbara, you said something really interesting backstage about how this is forcing us to rethink, and not to rethink, but to sharpen the skills in the way that we communicate the principles of prosperity that we all know and love. This might be the turning of the tide.
I mean, the global order as we knew it, the past World War II order doesn't exist anymore, as we can see it, obviously. And we have not learned from the mistakes of the 70s that Jim already mentioned briefly with regards to inflation. And so there is an option, an opportunity in looking at the defragmentation. I'm not using the term that the European Central Bank has just invented to save certain countries, but the fragmentation of certain continents. Because I think collaboration is something that we as libertarians, as pro-market people who believe in market-based solutions have always done, and it has worked. So collaboration and getting those to do the right things that they can do best. So those are two actually tools that we need to use. Get out of politics, let them do their thing, but that be us, be individuals, be individual enterprises, and collaborate and intervene and innovate and get new things out on the market. And this is, I think, the truly important thing. And get rid of all those sanctions, because the sanctions that we see will hurt Europe more, at least from a European perspective. US is too far away, but it will hurt Europe much more than it does harm to the Russians right now. And
that's the big debate that we're having in Latin America, by the way, on the protectionist instinct that has reemerged, and you know, the idea of autarky.
I'm not a big fan of Keynes, and I would never, especially in a room like that, quote him. But Keynes said something very wise in 1924, after Versailles treaty has long been done. And he said the following: the positive assistance to victims is better than the punishment of the aggressors. And I think we should keep that in mind, and there is a lot of money already on the plate that will support and help Ukraine rebuild it once the war hopefully is over soon. But sanctions, I don't think, is the right way.
So no sanctions, no lockdowns, those are two critical lessons. What else, Steve?
I'd mention 3 quick things. Number one, we have to get rid of Joe Biden. He is the worst president in American history. And you know, it's not just Biden. The left has infiltrated every area of our federal government, and it shows. We just have a new study out, by the way, that shows that the majority, 62% of the people that Biden has put in place, I don't know if you've seen this yet, Jimmy, 62% of the people he's put in his cabinet or in his top regulatory agencies or in the White House who deal with the economy, finance, or commerce, the 62% of them have never worked for a business in their life.
Yeah.
62% of them. And that wasn't by accident. They put those people in because this is an administration that hates business. So we need a regime change, and I'm with my buddy Larry Kudlow, who says the cavalry is coming. I think there's going to be a huge, massive sweep election in November, and then we'll see what happens in 2024. Number 2, the greatest existential threat in the world right now is not climate change, it's climate change fanaticism. Climate change fanaticism is an incredible danger to our country. If you want it, I always get asked this question: are these people doing to the American economy, are they doing this intentionally? By the way, how many of you think it's intentional?
Oh, wow.
A lot of you do. I don't know if it's intentional, but if you wanted to destroy an economy, a first world economy, a good way to do it would be to disrupt its energy supply.
Look at Germany right now.
Exactly.
Germany has
We're doing
reopened
exactly
the coal
what
plants
Germany did. And so
after we have done
this is so frustrating because we have more oil, gas, and coal in this country than any other country in the world. This country was built on fossil fuels. It's what powers the world. And the biggest problem with these green crazies is that that 1 out of 6 people in the world, including a lot of people in the third world countries, don't have clean water and they have energy poverty. And to take away their energy is inhumane. And then third and finally, I agree with you. I think China is an existential threat. I think China right now is Germany circa 1936, and we better wake up to this. And Trump got that China is not a friend, they're not an ally, they're an enemy and an adversary and a dangerous one, and we better wake up to that.
Jim, better wake up.
Well, I will agree with
We have 1 minute and 45 seconds between
I will
you and
agree
Jim.
with Preity that the 21st century is the century of Asia, whether we like it or not. There are many problems in Asia. There will be many in the future. She thinks it's India. I think it's other people. It doesn't matter. I just urge you to please learn about Asia, because when the problems come, remember in 2008, it was China who bailed out the world and saved the world, but even China has a lot of debt now. So please, please figure out what's going on, because it's going to be very, very, very bad the next time we have problems. I think that Asia is going to help us, but Asia is going to have huge problems too. Be very worried. And to Steve's point, I said before, you know, none of these guys can get real jobs. That's why they work for government. I didn't know the numbers were that bad.
Yeah, pretty bad.
62%. I mean, that's part of the main problem in the U.S., not just the U.S., in many other countries. They don't know what they're doing. So that's another reason to be very, very worried, because they don't know what they're doing, and they will make it wrong, whatever they do.
Preity, you have 30 seconds.
All right. How to turn the tide, be informed about what's going on in the world. Americans are very insular. You need to know geopolitically what's going on. That be informed. Knowledge is power at this particular point in time, and that knowledge will really help you. Be hopeful, be positive. We are so lucky and so blessed to be alive at this point in time. Have faith that the democratic powers of the world will come together. Look, truth always triumphs, good always wins, light always wins. So just keep that in mind. And as for politically, I think the U.S. needs to work closely with its allies, and I think together we can do this.
I'm getting the red light. So.
And no Latin
Wait,
America.
I gotta say one thing on the
No
way out.
Latin
And
America.
I know we're over time, but I'm an optimist. So I'm going to say this. The reason I know that America will triumph over China is because our Chinese are smarter than their Chinese, right?
Yes.
Jimmy, I think you had something.
Hey, remember, America goes from Alaska all the way down to Patagonia.
Yes.
And you left that out so
Latin
far.
America, we'll have to pick it up tomorrow. We have a special session, Liberando, in Latin America, to talk about the wave of autocracy and the wave of illiberal populism that has emerged in Chile, in Argentina, in Peru, and in my own country, Mexico. But I will end with this. There is a ray of very credible hope on the other side of Chile. Tiny little Uruguay is giving us a great example, not just for Latin America, but for the rest of the world, with Luis Lacalle Pou's narrative about responsible freedom. Thank you all.